Cunningham, I want to thank you for being with us, and Sherry Honkala, national organizer for the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign. She grew up there in Minneapolis, usually based in Philadelphia. As we remain here in Minneapolis for our next segment. Democracy Now! Broadcasts on over 750 stations, on Pacifica and NPR stations, low-power FM, college and community radio stations, as well as on public access TV and PBS TV stations, and both TV satellite networks, Dish Network Channel 9415 Free Speech TV, 9410 Link TV, and on DirecTV, Channel 375. We're video, audio, podcasting at democracynow.org. Our headlines are available in Spanish. And yes, we're broadcasting right there in the Twin Cities on public access in St. Paul, SPNN, St. Paul Neighborhood Network, where we broadcast from during the Republican convention, and also on KFAI, wonderful fresh air radio, on community radio throughout the Twin Cities. As we end today's broadcast by looking at the latest developments in the case of the RNC 8. Last September in St. Paul, Ramsey County prosecutors formally charged 8 members of the group RNC Welcoming Committee with conspiracy to riot in furtherance of terrorism. The 8 activists are believed to be the first people ever charged under the 2002 Minnesota version of the Federal Patriot Act. The activists face up to 7.5 years in prison. The criminal complaints filed by the Ramsey County attorney reportedly do not allege any of the defendants personally engaged in any act of violence or damage to property. Instead, authorities are seeking to hold the 8 defendants responsible for acts committed by other individuals during the opening days of the Republican National Convention. In December, Ramsey County attorney Susan Gartner, who is also running for governor of Minnesota, added 3 more felony charges. Combined, the charges could carry a maximum of 12.5 years in prison. Luce Guillen-Givens is one of the RNC 8. Luce, she's also joined by Jordan Kushner, an attorney for the RNC 8. They both join us from Minneapolis. Luce, when do you go to court?
My next hearing is on February 27th in the morning, and it's a motions hearing on discovery.
And what are you exactly charged with?
I have 4 felony counts that I'm facing: conspiracy to commit riot in furtherance of terrorism, conspiracy to commit riot, conspiracy to commit criminal damage to property in furtherance of terrorism, and conspiracy to commit criminal damage to property.
Luce, what were you doing at the Republican convention?
Well, at the convention, I was in jail. I'd been in jail since the Saturday before, but I did spend more than a year and a half beforehand organizing with a group called the RNC Welcoming Committee, and we were primarily an infrastructural, logistical group bringing together a lot of different people for radical protests at the convention.
Jordan Kushner, there has already been a case that's gone to trial that we covered because it involved an FBI informant. That case went to mistrial. What is the significance of the 2 men who were charged in that case? And that case, what was it, a hung jury? And what it means for the RNCA?
That's right. It was a hung jury, and technically it doesn't mean anything for the RNC-8 because there's no connection whatsoever between the RNC-8 and those people, even though the prosecutor in that case was trying to tie them to the welcoming committee. But the fact that you had people who indisputably had Molotov cocktails and the jury couldn't agree on convicting them, I don't think that bodes well at all for the state in this case, where you have people who were locked up in jail while the convention protests were going on, aren't accused of having or doing anything that could cause any harm to other people, and yet they're being charged with felony terrorist charges.
And Jordan Kushner, the latest information about FBI informant within the RNC Welcoming Committee that has just come out?
That's right. He was an FBI informant. It actually was an FBI informant in that Molotov cocktail case too, although he wasn't called because of the criminal charges of his own that he's facing. He was arrested for some violent burglary charges in January, where he broke into someone's house, assaulted 2 people, and so he's facing felony charges right now in Hennepin County over that. He's the principal informant in the RNC-8 case, the main person they're relying on to accuse them of planning destruction of property.
What will it mean for your case, given that he was just charged in a criminal case? I mean, could charges against him be lessened depending on what he said in the RNC 8 case?
Well, we don't know right now because his prosecution's at the beginning stages, and of course it shouldn't have any effect. This is something he did on his own, and it's actually much more violent than anyone that's involved in the protest is accused of doing. So I think it would be scandalous if they lessened his charges in that case and let him out of committing violent felonies because he's cooperating in a political prosecution against political protesters, and so we'll have to see how this dynamic plays out.
Lutz, did you know him? According to the paper this morning, Andrew Darts, 30 years old, spied on anarchists planning disruptions at the RNC, the paper said.
I did know him. He was an active part of the welcoming committee for a number of months before the convention, and he was somebody that I saw and spoke to on a regular basis. For those who are watching TV, we had just showed a picture of Brandon Darby. Now, Brandon was the self-confessed FBI foreman when documents came out showing was in the other case of the two young men who were charged, whose case ended up with a hung jury, so they face another case. Lutz, your case, it's believed that you're the first people to be charged under the Minnesota version of the USA Patriot Act that was passed in 2002. The significance of this as we wrap up. I think the significance is that this is one more step in the process of criminalizing dissent. Of course, people were outraged when the Patriot Act passed in the first place, and then state versions were passed across the country, and it's significant anywhere that people would be prosecuted as terrorists for involving themselves in political dissent of any nature. And of course, it's not about necessarily agreeing with our politics or towing any sort of party line. It's the fact that we do have a right to protest. Any prosecution under a Patriot Act or any similar legislation infringes on those rights.
I want to thank you both for being with us. Lutz Givens, one of the RNC 8. They face trial now. Jordan Kushner, attorney for the RNC 8. And that does it for our broadcast from Minneapolis and from Arizona. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Berkshire, Fotocadusa, Armata, Angela Comet, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Masood, Robbie Karen. Special happy birthday to Neil Shibata and Peter Curries. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.